So today we're going to be looking at the above dragons of the series. Basically all of the characters that fall into this tier of power, or at least what the consensus believes to be. So this is the tier of power that is thought to be between dragon and god. And if you would like a better understanding of what this exactly is and where it came from, please check out my video, What is Above Dragon? This is pretty much the highest tier of power currently, outside of Saitama, of course. So all of the characters that fall into this tier are going to be the strongest in the series that we know of right now. If you follow One Piece, this is kind of like Yonko level, I suppose. And that being said, you might think, well, what about disaster level god? Isn't that the highest tier of power, and aren't there god level monsters? Well, yes, and not exactly. Despite what other YouTubers will lead you to believe, there are no official disaster level god characters, at least yet. In fact, disaster level god is hardly ever touched on in the series at all. And if you would like a better understanding of this level, then also please check out my video, Disaster Level God Explained. That will give you a genuine and honest breakdown of what it is, no clickbait or deception. Also, as of right now, there are only about 5 definitive characters that fall into this tier, more or less. So I'm going to go over them one by one. So first, let's touch on Tatsumaki, and yes, she is a consensus above dragon. Now, granted, we haven't seen her best feats yet in the manga, but I still feel that enough of what we have actually seen are going to give credence to this level. So first of all, she's number 2 in the S class, and we can assume that's based purely on power. Now, of course, I know that there are other nuances that go into those rankings. But as for her individual ranking along with Blast, who we're going to get into, I feel that this is predicated mainly on power, and that is because of how absurd she is. And that's definitely even above that of what we consider to be a high dragon. I mean, let's go over some of the first feats we have seen from her during Boros' invasion. We can't forget, when they started raining down those gigantic bullets, she was able to stop all of them and send them back up at the ship, and this really didn't seem to be that difficult to her. Also, the way that she was able to raise all of that debris from the destroyed city behind her. When we just saw the comparison between what an S-class level hero like Tank Top Master was capable of doing, compared to what she was doing, it was just, they were in completely different leagues of power. More so than just what a demon and a dragon would be, and I could just go even further. Because we saw recently what she did against a disaster level dragon monster in Garou, who, you know, could be like a mid-level dragon probably, but still has some respect on their name, is very powerful, and could do techniques that even kind of impressed Tatsumaki, and still, this was nothing compared to her at all. Like, she ripped apart Garou easily, and Garou couldn't do anything to her. So that's pretty much all I can really say about Tatsumaki for now. Later on in the video, I'm going to be going into webcomic stuff, and then I could go further into her feats and why it really definitively makes her an above dragon level threat. But aside from that, she's pretty much the only hero outside of the next one that we're going to be talking about that really attains this level, at least objectively, I'll say, what we can all at least agree on from a community standpoint. And that brings us to Blast, who is really the only other S-class hero who is, I feel, definitively on this level of power. So we're not talking about King in this video. He's a whole other monster for a whole other discussion. We're just mainly looking at the above dragons, or at least the solidified ones. So yeah, we haven't seen any feats from Blast yet. We haven't even seen him in the manga yet. Only that silhouette of him, and then previously just that back shot of him. But we do know of his feats, and he was able to solo Elder Centipede. So however you feel how nerfed Elder Centipede was, the one that fought Blast, I think that really doesn't matter. We saw what Elder Centipede did against Bang Bomb and Genos, against Metal Bat, how big he is. The fact that anyone by themselves is able to push him to the brink of death is very telling of their power, because Elder Centipede is a consensus high dragon, so I feel it's justified to think that anyone who could do this by themselves is probably above that level of power. But if that's not enough, we also have the little inscription about him in the data book coming from the perspective of Fubuki, who says that he could defeat all of the S-class by himself, and that she theorizes that he is stronger than King, and this is like the King that is from the perspective of the public, which only goes off of the feats of Saitama. So someone on this level, I feel, is definitely, at the minimum, above Dragon. So that's why I want to place him here. It's also very possible that he is even disaster level God, but I'm not going to go that far because, like what I said, none have been confirmed thus far. But I do have many videos on Blast. Just check out my Blast playlist. That will give you a way better understanding of how strong he truly could be. So now let's go into Boros, who is pretty much the poster boy for above Dragon, also the next guy that we're going to be talking about, because one, when asked what his disaster level was, said he's greater or equal to Dragon, which gave birth to above Dragon. So aside from all of his insane feats, this is just proof right here that he is definitely in this tier. We don't really have to go any further, but I'll just dispel people thinking that he is God level. Now, of course, when he goes into his meteoric burst form and he does the collapsing star roaring cannon, that is credence for what would be meeting the requirements for disaster level God. No doubt about that. But one's reluctance to give him that level, I think, just leaves him here. Because I feel that the community, or at least the popular opinion amongst it, is that one is saving disaster level God for later in the series. He doesn't want to drop it now because it's very imposing. It's a very significant title. Like, if we just see a character eventually that has the box that says disaster level God under him, regardless of your enthusiasm that you have for the series, you will get hyped to some degree seeing that. So we don't need to see that early on. We could just settle for somebody being just simply greater to or equal to Dragon, as what we have with Boros here. So the other poster boy that I mentioned was Orochi, because he is also an above Dragon. I mean, he was quite literally given this disaster level by Murata when he was asked what his disaster level was, and he said the same exact thing, more or less, depending on the translation that you got, as 1, which is greater or equal to Dragon. And I feel that if we didn't already believe that from Chapter 92, what he did against Garou, which turned out to be just his restricted form, when he goes into what we assume to be his true form against Saitama in Chapter 108, there's really no other dragons, high, mid, or whatever, that have been able to replicate any feats like that. I'm not talking about the above dragons because, of course, Boros is on that level, which is further giving credence to why they are in the same tier. But when he starts shooting off those crazy plasma fire beam lasers, whatever you want to call them, that is truly above dragon level stuff. And this is what this video is really trying to exemplify, is that there is a clear difference between high dragons like Koketsu, Elder Centipede, and then guys like Boros and Orochi. So they're not quite God level like what I've been saying, but they're very close, closer than any of the other dragons, which is why they're falling into this in-between tier. So at this point, I'm going to have to go into webcomic spoilers to talk about the remaining above dragons, as well as go deeper into Tatsumaki's feats. So if you don't want to know what's going to happen, I suggest you check out now. So now that we're in spoiler territory, we could talk about Awakened Garou, who is the 5th definitive above dragon. So let me just dispel something real quick. Awakened Garou claims that he is disaster level God. This is not like the narration saying it. He's simply referring to himself being the prophecy that Shibawa talked about early on in the series, how the humanity is in danger and all that stuff, and that he is disaster level God. It's also a callback to him talking about it at the Sitch's End of the World meeting when he has all of the underground guys come together, and we see Hero Hunter Garou there. He's like, I'm going to be disaster level God. This is not confirming that he is, because he's just not. I mean, his performance against Saitama and the S-Class heroes is insane. And it's clearly on the level of what Boros could do and what has been implied of Blast, at least from the data book. But he's just not quite on that God level. At least I feel that we, the consensus, don't agree with that, at least. Also, there's some credence to that as well, because Murata said, according to one who he has a very close relationship, obviously, he says Garou and Boros are equally strong. So I think that just settles that right there. I mean, if one says that Boros is above dragon, greater or equal to dragon, and he also says that they are equally strong, then I guess it just means that he is also an above dragon. So I think that just settles it right there. So now let's talk about Golden S. And I just don't feel that he is a definitive above dragon like the other characters that we've talked about in this series. Now, I'm not saying that he's definitely not. There is arguments to be made that he could be, But I just feel that right now, all that we have to go off of with the webcomic is kind of holding him back from definitively attaining that level. Maybe once we see him in the manga, maybe we'll get a better understanding of him. Maybe he will achieve that level. But right now, there's so many things that kind of conflict with it. So granted, he does have very impressive feats, at least implied feats for the most part. I mean, we saw him wreck Tatsumaki. You know, she was also very damaged, which hindered her power. And that brings us to one saying that Tatsumaki, in her best shape, could have beaten Golden S. And we all agree that Tatsumaki isn't above Dragon. So does that mean that Golden S is as well? Or is he falling just under that level? Also, we have to remember his performance against Garou pre-Awaken. You know, peak pre-woke Garou, if you will. He was getting beat by him. He was able to compete with him, at least from a visual standpoint, in the speed department. You know, got the praise of a My Mask, who said that he's a monster that they can't beat. Even if they all were to team up, it wouldn't be easy. But just the way that he went against peak pre-woke Garou, and the fact that he died against Awakened Garou, that's like 0-2 against two definitive above dragons. You know what I mean? So either he's the weakest above dragon, he's like the low above dragon, if you will, I don't know, or he's just the strongest high dragon. This might be a little confusing, but I'm sure some of you understand what I'm trying to say here. It's going to come down to the manga, more or less. And then lastly, let's just go into Tatsumaki's webcomic feats to solidify her as a definitive above dragon if she wasn't already. She pulls the friggin' Monster Association out of the ground, which is gigantic, and it wrecks a good portion of Z City. This level of strength is only capable of beings on this level, in my opinion. She also deals with multiple executives at once, and doesn't really seem to have that big of an issue doing it. She's also fast enough to like throw up a psychic barrier at the last second to defend against the full brunt of Golden Est's Ultra Instinct attack that he does on her. She's also able to lift Saitama with her psychic powers, which is implied to be like an insane feat. Like just lifting Saitama without wind, which he says, it just pushes her to like her absolute limit, even in a damaged state. This is all like above dragon stuff, honestly. There's really no other dragons that could do stuff like this, high or whatever, so if you weren't convinced she was by now, I don't know what to tell you. So yeah, those are the above dragons, and I'll throw them up on the screen just for a little recap here in no particular order. But let me know what you thought about this. Is there somebody that you probably feel is an above dragon that I haven't talked about? How do you feel about Golden S? And just what do you feel about the ones that we have talked about so far? And if you've liked it, please give it a like. I also have a Patreon. It gives you access to a weekly Q&A. And if you haven't already, please subscribe as well. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.